Hey, good morning. This is Jamie with Stonemaier Games. I am here on, July 17th for my weekly live cast. You might be watching it live right now, or you might be watching it on YouTube in about an hour when I put it there. I wrote a blog entry about that recently, about how Dusty from The Mill helped me figure out how to get the video over to YouTube. And Phoebe, actually, another content creator, recommended another site that I'm going to try today called downvids.net. So we'll see if that is even easier than Dusty's method. Today's chocolate of the day, let's start out with that. There was a sale on Theo chocolate, as you can see, I've already opened it. Sale on Theo chocolate the other day at Whole Foods. And I thought I got my favorite one, but I missed it by like 15 percentage marks. So this is the 17% dark chocolate salted almond. The one that I really love is, I think, the 55%, but maybe they don't make it anymore. Maybe they didn't have it. I don't know. This is still really good, but I like it slightly less dark. That's I think 55% is kind of my sweet spot for chocolate, but still really good. And if you have a Whole Foods, I believe Theo is on sale right now. This is a Seattle-based chocolatier that I experienced for the first time last year when I went to Seattle around this time of year. Maybe it was May, June, sometime around this time last year. I'm seeing viewers. I'm not seeing comments, so I can't see what you're saying yet. Hopefully they'll populate in a minute. There we go. There we go. They all jump up at once. Good morning, folks. Thank you for dropping by. See some friendly faces here. Phoebe, who I just mentioned, is here, who connected me with downvids.net, which we'll see how that works after I'm done recording this. So what's going on today? Stonemaier game stuff. Let me see if I have anything. I'm doing a play test this afternoon. I did a play test of a different game last week. Both games I'm very, very excited about. And let's see. Yeah, Renee's asking for news. Oh, I do have a bit of news. Okay, I haven't said this officially yet, but I mentioned it on Instagram the other day. We are after Gen Con, so I'm not going to Gen Con. MeepleSource will be kind of representing us a little bit at Gen Con. They'll be selling some of our products. There's some wonderful ambassadors who will be helping to sell our products and demo our products in the exhibit hall at Gen Con. But we won't have anything really new. I guess the Scythe modular board is new, and that'll be at Gen Con. But right after Gen Con, August 7th, that's when I'm doing our e-newsletter, and that's when I will announce a new game. I haven't really said much about this game specifically. I've talked about games that I'm working on, but I haven't said this is the game that we're announcing. But on Instagram the other day, if someone wants to link to my Instagram feed, it's Jamie Stegmaier, at Jamie Stegmaier. I did post a photo of a teaser from our factory. They're wrapping up production right now on this game. So August 7th, I will announce a new product. And if you have questions, I appreciate that. I'm not going to answer them, or I really don't think I'll answer them unless you ask something really general that I can't answer. But yeah, August 7th, something to look forward to. And if you already subscribed to our e-newsletter, you don't need to do anything special. You will get an e-newsletter notification on August 7th about that. Let me see if there's any other Stonemaier game stuff right now. I don't think so. No, I think that's the only Stonemaier Games news. Looking at my notes here of things that I've been working on. I vacuumed today, but that's not Stonemaier Games related. Let's see. Connor says, legacy questions today. Connor, let's see. I have a number of topics today, and there might be other questions. But if you feel like anyone can ask me anything. It's fair game. There's very rarely such thing as too much information. I might not answer the question, but you're happy to ask anything you want. Mose says, lately I'm more and more interested in games that have a custom insert, or at least seem to put a lot of effort into making the setup easier and quicker. How important do you think this is? I could give you a long answer about this. I'll give you a pretty short answer. The short answer is I think inserts that help make a game easier to set up and clean up are fantastic. The one catch, so that's the good side, and so I think they're pretty important. They're also aesthetically pleasing. You know, that experience of opening a box I think is important. But long term, I think setup and cleanup are the main focus when you come to an insert. The catch for an insert is that it's really difficult to plan for expansions for a game for any game. Like we don't really know how popular any game will be. We don't know if it'll have 0 expansions or 10 expansions, and so you can kind of think ahead and hopefully plan room in that insert for it. But you may not foresee the future. You probably can't foresee the future. So it's really tough for a publisher to really plan for the future with that insert, and also have an insert that doesn't just look like you have a bunch of empty space in the insert, because it can make people feel like you left stuff out of the game if you have too much room in the insert. So it's kind of a catch-22 with the insert, of having a beautiful custom-made insert. Do you shape it for the components in the original game? Do you leave room for a ton of expansions? Or do you maybe go with a happy medium and leave room for some expansions, but not a ton? And then there's also box size considerations too. Like Wingspan, it's a very full box. And there is a custom insert in it for the cards that I made it as big as I could to fit into that box, but that's the best we could really do. Bojan says, what is my favorite Civilization faction? I assume you're talking about Civilization, the video game, and I really haven't played many. I haven't played much of it. I played through the tutorial a few times to kind of get a feel for it, but I try not to get too sucked into video games, because then I sacrifice all of my my work time by doing that. So I don't know if I can accurately answer that question. I can say that I played the tutorial a few times and enjoyed it. I really like that one more turn aspect of it. Can I do one more thing better? Can I extend this turn a little bit more? I like that a lot. Renee says he saw a new profile picture of Stonemaier Games, and there's a Scythe box in it, but he can't confirm what it was exactly. Yeah, I actually, my girlfriend pointed out that my profile photo for myself, my personal profile photo, was a little outdated. Not too bad, but a little bit outdated. And I had a more current photo that she liked, and so I switched over my personal photo on Facebook. And at the same time, there was another photo I realized that I liked that I took last week at our warehouse, the warehouse we use. And so I thought, okay, I'll update that. I had our graphic designer, Dave Hewer, update that photo with the Stonemaier Games logo, because the previous Stonemaier Games avatar that I was using across many platforms was really old. I think it was taken in the summer of 2012, so 7 years ago. I didn't even have gray hair back then, amazingly. So I thought it was fair to update that photo to the current Jamie with the Stonemaier Games logo. So if you go to actually you're here right now. If you look up at my my avatar at the top of this page, that is the new photo that I just put there a day or so ago. Let's see. Joseph says, I would like to know if your opinion about regression in games has changed. If I go back in some way without a benefit, without, for example, losing units, a base destroyed. It depends on the game. There's certainly games where I am fine with losing something. I think sacrifice can be an important motivator or an important incentive in games, but it's something that I avoided my designs. It's just not something that I generally go out. Like an example would be in Euphoria, if you are building a market, if someone could go and take your worker die out of the market. So you've spent a turn putting it there to start building that market, and you've spent a resource. If someone else could do something to remove your die and basically negate your turn. So I guess that's a good way to summarize it. If there's anything that someone can do to completely negate a previous turn that I made, I don't like it. I'm not going to put that in one of my designs, or I'm going to avoid it. Hopefully I haven't intentionally done that. Definitely haven't intentionally done that, but unintentionally. And in general, when I play games that do that, when you can do something that completely negates my turn, I can't think of a circumstance where that ever feels good. And I want to make people feel good when they play my games. I want them to feel good and clever. It doesn't always need to mean that they're progressing in the game, but that type of progression I'm just not a fan of. Do you have an example though, Joseph? What made that come to mind? Did you play a game recently where there was a bit of regression that still didn't bother you or actually felt fun? I'd be impressed if you gave an example of regression that feels fun. I'd like to hear that example if you have one. Brian says, am I going to be revealing a new game on August 7th? Yes, Brian. Yeah, that's what I was talking about a minute ago. Maybe you came in after that. Yeah, on August 7th, I will be revealing a new game from Stonemaier Games. Let's see if I have any. I'll jump back over to the questions in a second. Other topics. Games that I played recently. I attended a game day this past weekend and played a couple new to me games. One I talked about yesterday on my video. I talked about Tuki, which was a really interesting block stacking game. in real time. A little stressful with the real time, but the block stacking element, the puzzle there, was really interesting, especially since you're stacking colored blocks, but physically the colored blocks by themselves cannot hold each other up, and so you need these other white blocks that hold up those other blocks, and the white blocks are not, they're not part of your goal at all. You can do whatever you want with the white blocks because they're technically not really there in terms of the eyes of the game. Really like that puzzle. I also played Cave Paintings, which is a game where it's kind of a drawing game. You're drawing pictures, trying to get people to guess what the pictures are, but you have to hold your dry erase marker like this at all times, even when you're writing words or when you're drawing, which kind of levels the playing field for people who are good at drawing or bad at drawing. And I played Just One. I played Just One many times at this point. And I played Forum Trajanum from Stefan Feld, which was kind of not classic, but classic Stefan Feld style. Lots of ways to get points, lots of different things to do. I do have a favorite mechanism in mind for my video, which I'll probably do on Friday of this week. But I had a really good time at game day. And I also played at another game night. I played Weird Doomed, which I just had a blast with. I think it's jumped up onto my list of kind of large group social style games. Definitely like a big prisoner's dilemma game with a giant 15-minute sand timer. I had a lot of fun with it. I've heard that it's not for everybody, even with the group that I was in. Some people were into it, some people stayed out, but I had a lot of fun with it. Chad says that his buddies and he will be playing the last 2 games of Rise of Fenris tonight, and it's his second time through the campaign. That's awesome, Chad. 2 times through the campaign. That's what it's built for. It's built for multiple campaigns or for modular play if you want. And that's awesome that you're getting through your second campaign. Josh says, is there any news on an expansion for My Little Scythe? Josh, we are working on it, but it's not. Yeah, we're working on an expansion for My Little Scythe. That's what I'll say right now. But I will have more news later. Chad says, if my new game had a flavor, what would it be? That's a fun question, Chad. It's a good workaround, but I'm sure I will spoil something if I say too much. I guess the one thing I could say, to be fair, is that it's pretty clear on my e-newsletter and the news section of our website which products are upcoming, which, like, the order, like I'm very visible about that, even though I hide what the games are. So Codename Clay is this game that I will be announcing on August 7th. So I'll answer your question to say that it tastes like clay. David is referring to my Sunday sit-down video from this past week, which was about dry erase games. I had a lot of fun with that video. I didn't realize that there were quite so many dry erase games that I really enjoyed, but there was a full top 10. Let's see, David, I'm not going to read your... I'll read your comments since I've already started here. He says, I really like dry erase more than pencil and paper. All my roll and write games like Welcome to Quicks, Quinto, Ganchan Clever, and scoring boards like Seven Wonders and Downforce have all the needed sheets for the players. And he covers them with transparent writable material. Yeah, that's a good workaround for that. That if you do that, you can just kind of make your own. You can either laminate it or you can use a sheet of clear plastic to cover up and just make a dry erase game out of any of these roll and write games. Yeah, I think that the catch for some of those games though is that you need really fine lines, and I think that can be a little difficult with traditional dry erase markers. Maybe there's one out there that has a really fine point that maintains that point, but I haven't used one yet. Darian says he noticed that Scythe was super cheap yesterday for Prime Day. Yes, Amazon, like any retailer, Amazon prices things as they wish. And apparently for Prime Day, it was very low. I saw Walmart price it very low too. Darian says, how do deep sales affect my distribution? That's a good question, Darian. I think it depends on how many people actually buy the games when that happens. So if a bunch of people bought Scythe over the last few days because it was cheap, then I know that local retailers probably aren't happy because it's tougher for them to discount those games. But it also means that probably more games are actually, what it probably means is that if Amazon sold a lot of games the other day, and if Walmart sold a lot of games because of those deep discounts, there might be a greater chance that they will then buy more of those games to replenish their inventory. That's probably what it means, which I don't know if that's all that great, but from my perspective, I am selling the games at the same price to all distributors, so I am making the same amount of money no matter who is selling these games. Jeff says, do I enjoy my role more as a game designer or as the owner-manager of Stonemaier Games? Um, Jeff, I would say that my answer to this question in general is that I enjoy variety in my job. I'm very lucky to have a ton of variety in my job. Some of it is content creation, whether it's videos like this or game design. Some of it is customer service. Some of it is logistics and game development and just problem solving. I love working with spreadsheets sometimes I don't like accounting all that much, but I have to do a little bit of that too. So I like the variety. I think I don't think I would choose one of those things over the other. Yeah. I'm smiling because Megan, my girlfriend, has joined us and is maybe watching and listening right now. Always happy to see you, Megan, here. Um, Connor has his legacy question. He says, okay, so Connor's legacy questions, if you're not familiar with it, Connor's joined multiple of these live casts, and he has a kind of a scenario that he's formed about me traveling abroad and being without many of my general resources like my wallet, my phone, and things like that. And here I am. So he says, I've explained the fame of Stonemaier games to the young game store worker, and he's allowed me to use the phone or try the dial-up internet for email. Who do I contact and what do I say? I hardly know anyone's phone number anymore, Connor. So without my phone, I don't think I would use. I wouldn't know who to call. And I think we've established I'm in a different country. I don't even know which country I'm in. I don't think in your scenario. So I would use email. And who would I contact? Maybe I would try to contact someone in that country that I know. Maybe if it's a country, hopefully I've figured out the country by now. I might contact our localization partner in that country. So if I'm in Italy, I might contact Genos, Alfredo and Anna over there, and see if they can help. So that might be my first contact via email. Jacob says, when playtesting, what would I say is the most important factor? So I guess you've gotten past, so yeah, that's a good question. Because I would say in game design, one of the most important factors is playtesting. But your question is, when you're actually playtesting, what would I say is the most important factor? That's tough. That's really tough. I would say to ask a lot of questions and pair that with observations. If it's a local playtest, if you're there, you're observing. Look at what players are doing, how they're behaving with the game. Look at what's intuitive. Look at the questions that they're asking multiple times. That can be a signal that something really isn't all that intuitive. Pay attention to what they're having fun with, what they're not having fun with, and then ask a lot of questions without trying to explain yourself. I still find that to be my instinct as I'm playtesting. I'll ask questions, I'll listen, and then I'll say, oh, well, this is what I was trying to do. And I think maybe there's a productive way maybe to do that, to say, okay, I've heard you. I understand that. I'm going to write it down. This is what I was trying to do. Why do you think that I didn't accomplish that? Like, clearly I didn't accomplish that. Why do you think that is? I think that's fair to ask. But it basically comes back to a lot of questions. Ask questions of your game designers, of your playtesters. But other designers may have very different answers to that. Maybe they'll answer in the comments below. I'll jump back to questions in a second. Let me see. I went to a wine tasting on Monday. For any of you who are interested in wine, maybe some viticulturists among us here. It was a chocolate and wine tasting. I was more interested in the chocolate, obviously, but it was really interesting to see how the flavors mixed with the wine. And we walked away with a bottle of kind of dessertish wine, a sparkling rosé, which wouldn't have been what I thought would be my favorite wine, but it was really nice and refreshing, especially in the summer. And we tried some weird chocolates. Some weren't all that weird. One was, I'd say the weirdest was this, what was it? It was like a peppercorn goat cheese chocolate that was really delicious. And we ended up buying a few of those because it was just a really unique flavor, a nice little truffle. But yeah, really nice event there. I posted about it on Instagram today if you're curious. And if you want to go there, maybe share a tasting that you've been to. I love hearing about that kind of stuff in the comments. Tom says, have I gotten a chance to play Planet? I have played Planet. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I like the feel of holding a planet in your hands because there's a really awesome magnetic 3D component in Planet that I enjoyed. And oh, yeah, it sounds like you ordered 3 copies, so you must really enjoy it. That's awesome, Tom. Gerald says that I don't like playing solo. It's not that I don't like it. Just it's not my preference. I prefer to play with people. However, what is my favorite solo experience, excluding the wonderful bots that Morton created? I don't actually know if Morton would call it a bot. I think he specifically calls it Automa because it's not a bot. It's intelligent. Uh, I just haven't played many. I mean, when I play against AI, it's usually on a board game port on like an iPad or online. It's not playing the Automa experience in a game. I would say Viticulture is really the only one that I've even played. Period. I've tried Honorim. I think that's the game Honorim, but I just couldn't figure it out from the rules. I don't know if it was me or if it was the rulebook. Usually I can figure out games from the rulebook, but I could not figure out Honorim from the rulebook. Chad just mentioned the Face app. Yeah, Chad, I just got this app this morning. It's funny that you should mention that. Uh, it's this app where you can make yourself, you can see what you look like when you're old. And yes, Chad, I like literally just downloaded it an hour ago after seeing someone else use it because I was curious. I was curious what I look like when I'm twice my current age. And I'm not really a fan. Like it was a little creepy to see because it was probably accurate. Like the app did a really good job. It wasn't just plastering like an old dude's face on my face. It was taking parts of my face and extending them into old age. And it was disconcerting. It was weird. Yeah, so I have used it. If anyone else wants to give it a try, it's called Face App. The aging part of it is free. There are also some add-ons that are a little weird, or not a little weird. Sorry, it's just that they cost money. But the aging part is free and it's weird. Yeah. Let's see. Chad says, will we be able to pre-order the new game on August 7th? No, like our typical pre-order method is that we announce a game, or I announce a game, and then a few weeks later is the pre-order. So there's a period of releasing information about the game over usually around 2 weeks, and then having usually about a week or two break, and then the pre-order. So building some anticipation, sharing information over time, so you can decide if it's a game for you, and then there will be like a 4-day pre-order period. Josh says, are there any games that are coming out this year that I'm looking forward to playing? Yeah, Josh, I'm terrible at answering this question because the answer is always yes, but I can never. I'm not good at like thinking of them because usually they're Kickstarters that I've like forgotten about, or they're games that have been announced or haven't been announced. I do know that I still have games on my shelf that I'm excited to play, but have not taken the time to learn. Quite a few of them, really. I think that I have 2 or 3 sections of my Calyx shelf over there that are games that I need to play. But you did bring up, Josh, I'm glad you brought this up because Kickstarter has kind of gone crazy over the last few days, really the last few weeks with really compelling games. And so I on my other monitor here, I have games that I'm following that I'm curious about. I didn't end up backing any over the last couple days after there was just kind of an influx of new games. And I'm probably going to miss one here. But the ones that I saw that I was intrigued by were Royal Bastards, Breaking Kickstarter Puzzle Blitz, Margraves of Valeria, One Small Step, Dice Throne Adventures, Shazin, and I don't know why it's not showing up on this page. Here we go. Trial by Trolley, Predaporter, Dwellings of Eldervale, which actually hasn't, it's still going on. It wasn't a recent launch. Either Fields, Tasty Humans, just a ton of like really well done games that I'm just really impressed and intrigued by. I did actually back Puzzle Blitz. That was the one that I did back because it seemed like a really interesting concept. It's basically an ongoing puzzle during the campaign itself, where that is the campaign. Like the campaign is the puzzle that you're working on in different teams during the campaign, and it's only like $2. So if you like puzzles, I recommend checking out Puzzle Blitz. Joseph says, Joseph was the one that asked me about regression in games, and I said, have you played a game that had regression that you enjoyed? And he says, I've yet to come to a game that has regression and is also really thematic. Can you point me in the right direction off the top of my head of a game with regression that is also thematic? Let me think. Some people might have to help answer this in the comments. Probably, I'm thinking of games that have direct combat or take that. They typically do have elements of regression where you do something and then someone can take it away from you. I'm not, those aren't games that I typically have in my collection, so I don't know any offhand, but there are plenty of games, take that games and games with combat that have those elements of progression. Andy says, he asked the question long ago, but never got the answer. Maybe if I see it here. Yeah, I'm sorry if I missed it before. Yeah, absolutely. What do I think about kid board games on Kickstarter? Do I think they stand a chance of getting funded? You know, Andy, I don't know if it was you, but someone asked me that in an email recently, and I replied with my answer, and then replied on, I encouraged the person to post it on our website, on my blog, and I answered there too. So you might go back and check where you asked the question, because I know I answered that question twice for somebody else recently, in case that was you. But what do I think about kids games, board games on Kickstarter? I think they have a tougher time getting funded than adult games, because adults are the ones paying money on Kickstarter to get the games. I know there is an aspect of parents who buy games for their kids or buy things for their kids, but for some reason I just haven't seen them be as successful on Kickstarter. So I think family games stand a chance on Kickstarter, but games geared specifically for kids, I think the odds are stacked against you. Brian says, if my new game was to show up at my house unexpected, would I love it? I hope so. I hope so, Brian. It depends on what types of games you like. So what are a few of your favorite games, and I'll let you know. Noel says, which months are the next few production runs of Wingspan expected to be released? Pretty much once a month for the next 4 months. I mean, we have some in stock now. That print run will be at retailers in about a month, and then we'll get, actually, I think after that, then certain distributors and retailers get more, and then there's more. We have like 4 print runs in the works right now, so they're staggered out from month to month. Ernani says, have I watched Rodney's Table Talk? Am I a collector? I'm sure you'll find it interesting. He talks about Kickstarter exclusives and limiting our collections. I have not watched that, but I love Rodney at Watch It Played, so I'll check that out. Thank you for the recommendation. Let me write that down so I don't forget. Am I a collector? Am I a collector? Okay, let me see if I have any other. I do have some other topics here. I'll jump back. I'll continue to jump back and forth here. Did a blog post about sunk cost fallacy the other day that a lot of people found interesting. I thought that was like a widely known concept, the idea of sunk cost fallacy, and I talked about it a little bit in terms of our website. The idea that I had prepaid for several years of GoDaddy hosting for our website, and it was just consistently slow and just not working, but I kept resisting the change because I had prepaid for it to get a discount. And finally, I kind of came to terms with it after several nudges from our web developer, and I said, okay, I will just treat it as a sunk cost. I'll stop trying to treat this as something that I can put up with, and I will invest in a better hosting platform for our website. Not saying that GoDaddy is bad, it just wasn't good enough for what our website needs at this point. So we switched over, and it's become much better. But it was interesting for me to look at that, even though I'm fully aware of the sunk cost fallacy, that I still got caught up in it with that prepayment to GoDaddy. So something to keep in mind if you're interested in behavioral economics, I'd highly recommend checking out the blog post, and I think there are several links there where you can check out about the sunk cost fallacy as well. Steven says, how well do your expansions sell versus our base games? I know Scythe is your best all-time seller. What percentage of Scythe owners buy Invaders or Windgambit or Fenris? You know, I have a spreadsheet that I update every quarter that tells me how many games we've sold, or how many games that are in circulation for each of our games and each of our expansions. And so I actually just updated that information today, Steven, so I can give you some pretty accurate numbers there. Let's see. So for Scythe, for example, there are 279,000 copies, not 100,000, 279,000 copies of Scythe in print across all languages. And Invaders from Afar, there are 113,000 copies in print. So that's around 40% of the total copies of Scythe. Windgambit is pretty similar. It's 111,000. Rise of Fenris is catching up. It's at 78,000 right now. That's for Scythe. Let's look over at Tuscany and Viticulture. Yeah, it's pretty consistent, actually. Viticulture is about to cross 100,000 copies sold, or in circulation. I don't know actually if they've been sold, but they're in circulation. And Tuscany's at 36,000. So, again, around 40%. So I think we're looking at at 40%, which I think is a bit high. I think that's a little unusual. And it's not across the board. Like Euphoria has 35,000 copies in print. The first print run of Ignorance is Bliss, which is now sold out, except for a few spare copies in our web store, had 5,000 copies in that first print run. So that's way lower than 40%, but maybe over time it'll catch up. I love looking at numbers like that. I have fun updating that to see what the patterns are and how things are going. Cody says, Ryan Lockett said on Twitter yesterday, since people now only play new games once or twice, it seems strange that we're printing them on such durable, high-quality material. Is this something you've thought about? That's really interesting. I don't want to refute Ryan because he certainly knows what he's talking about. I think it's a little bit of a generalization, but I think it is possible that for many games, we only end up playing them once or twice. I have games that enter my collection that don't even that don't ever get played. So, but to his point, strange that we're printing them on such durable, high-quality material. That's interesting. Maybe that's why roll and write games are doing so well, because they can use lesser quality materials for the most part, and lower the cost of them. I see a fun question here coming up next, but yeah, Cody, that's an interesting question. I haven't thought too much about that because usually when I make our games, I want to include the highest quality materials that I can. For years of replayability. I want it to have the potential for years of replayability at a reasonable cost. Those are the two things that I'm mitigating. Gerald says, pretty personal question here, but I'll answer it. He says, can I show with the distance between my hands how much I love Megan? I care we're just a month into our relationship. I care very much for Megan. I do have strong feelings for her. I don't know if I'd quite use the term love yet, although there's a lot that I love about her. So I'm going big. I'm going full wingspan in terms of like there's a lot of good feelings there for Megan. Joseph says, is there any designer you'd like to meet that you haven't just that I haven't just to pick their brain? You know, the nice thing about the internet is that I've had conversations with many of my favorite designers, really actually all of my favorite designers. But there's a difference, you know, between communicating over email and actually just sitting down and having a meal with someone and talking to them about games at length. And so, yeah, I mean, I would love to someday have dinner with the guys that I've called my favorites for a while now. But that it's really even hard for me to say that because there's so many games out there, so many wonderful designers that I'd love to talk to. So I don't want to limit it, Joseph. I would gladly sit down and have a meal with a number of designers, many designers, especially if there's a few of us just talking about design. I would enjoy any of those experiences, whether or not they've designed any of my favorite games or not. I think I'd enjoy that. Cody says, have I eaten that soul taco in the Loop? He had the gogi and waffles and loved it. Interesting. I haven't had the gogi and waffles. I've had their quesadilla many times, which I love the flavors in their quesadilla. But I haven't had the gogi and waffles. I need to try that now. Thank you for the recommendation. You're recommending a place like 10 minutes from where I live. Annika is joining us. Annika is she looks after my niece during some days. And so just in case Maudie is watching, hi Maudie. Uncle Jamie says hi. Tim says, what do they do with all the face information they gather? Ooh, Tim, that's a good question. So Tim's referring to the Face app that I downloaded. And I don't know, Tim. I guess they could use my face for something, but I hope not. I don't think I gave them permission to do that. Arthur says, what would I think about an expansion to a game that already exists, but which substantially changes the rules to it by using the same components or board? So in the end, you'd have two different games, but the expansion would be presumably cheaper because you already have those components in the original game. Do I know of any games that do this? Actually, maybe there's a very recent example because one of the Kickstarters I mentioned earlier is Dice Throne Adventures, and I am pretty sure I read up a little bit about it yesterday, but Dice Throne Adventures is a very different game than Dice Throne, but you can use any of the characters from Dice Throne to play in Dice Throne Adventures. So it actually, Arthur, this is a well-timed question. Look into Dice Throne Adventures on Kickstarter right now because I think it might actually accomplish that. And as I was reading that, I was just kind of in awe that they were able to do that because That could not have been easy to do. Miles says Isle of Cats. Yeah, I am backing Isle of Cats, Miles. I'm very excited about that one. That is one that was an auto back for me for thematic reasons, for designer reasons, production reasons, every reason I wanted that game. Okay, back to our legacy questions from Connor. I'm in northern Thailand. Okay, thank you for reminding me. My Thai contact, we do actually have a Thai version of Wingspan, so I do have a contact in Thailand. Says that I need to go to Bangkok to get some funds, some money. The game store worker offers you to take me via moped. Do I double with him or drive myself? I guess I'd double. I don't know if I'd be happy about it, but I'm already in tough circumstances here, so yeah, I'll double up and just and bite the bullet and go to Bangkok with this almost complete stranger. God, this is such a weird scenario. Steven says, probably going to make counterfeit Jamies to make counterfeit board games. I was talking about the WhatsApp. Although that kind of ties back to Ryan's comment that someone else just mentioned a minute ago. I think Cody mentioned it about how if you put cheaper components in your games, the chances of it being counterfeited go up. Where if you put components that are harder to replicate, chances of counterfeiting go down. I do have a few shows that I'm watching right now. I don't know if this will be of interest to you, but I'm in the middle of a show called Euphoria, which has nothing to do with the game that I designed called Euphoria, as it turns out. In fact, it could not be less like the game Euphoria. But it's disturbing and interesting and kind of fascinating to watch. It's basically about modern high school, which when I went to high school, as far as I know, there was definitely not much drugs or sex. But in this show, there's a lot of drugs and a lot of sex. And maybe that just wasn't my experience. But it's a very interesting show to watch. Some of it I like. The drug stuff, it definitely makes me uncomfortable, and I think that's the intent of the show. I'm more interested in the relationships between the people in the show. Friendship, romantic, some just sexual. I think those are interesting to watch in the show. But so far, the show is really interesting, really well written, and the cinematography is surprisingly very good. Like the production value, of course, it's HBO, is excellent. And I'm also midway through the current season of Stranger Things, which I am really enjoying as well. I think we're at the point where things are really starting to pick up. Not a ton has happened so far, but Stranger Things is so much about the characters at this point now that I'm just happy to hang out with those characters for 50 minutes when I watch Stranger Things. So I'm really enjoying that too. So if any of you are watching either of those shows, no spoilers, but feel free to share whether or not you're enjoying them. And if you think that modern high school is actually as it's depicted in Euphoria. I hope not, especially with the drug use. I'm okay with kids experimenting a little bit as long as they're safe with sexual stuff and that they're not doing anything illegal. But the drug use, man, it's disturbing to watch that in the show. Joseph says, any mechanisms that are currently and surprisingly piquing my interest? Let's see. Well, yeah, I have a long list of games that I need to talk about. So some games that I'm going to be talking about upcoming favorite mechanisms are Forum Trajanum, Cave Paintings, Blue Lagoon, Red Dragon Inn, Tournament at Camelot. I'm going back into Geekway games at this point. Photosynthesis, Rise of Tribes, Lords of Vegas. Yeah, I have a list of like 20 games I've got to cover. I've got to go way back. Yeah, quite a few. Let's see. Okay, people are giving examples of regression here, which I appreciate. These are some good examples here. Pete says, yeah, still going through examples of regression. Yeah, thank you folks for doing that. I'm looking for questions now. Stephen recommends Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. He discusses sunk costs, but also many cognitive illusions and good and bad habits in thinking. Someone recommended an article from him, Stephen, it might have been you actually, in the comments of that blog post, my sunk cost fallacy blog post, but I wasn't aware of a book, so I'm going to make a note of that, Thinking Fast and Slow. I'm trying to make a little bit more time, like in the afternoon, to take like a half hour to read some of the many great business books that I have on my shelf back there. Because I found that I can't read them late at night because it turns my brain on instead of turning my brain off as fiction does. But But I really enjoy that type of content. I walk away just kind of like buzzing with ideas and excitement after I read those great business style books and behavioral economics books, things like that. So I appreciate the recommendation. Maybe I'll add it to my afternoon reading in the near future. Daniel looks like he's joined us from China. Wow, Daniel, all the way over in China. What are you doing over there? Are you at a production facility or visiting friends? Arthur says, what do I think of games with a high skill ceiling designed for tournaments, for example? Do I think Scythe has that capacity? It would be really nice to see Scythe tournaments organized by Stonemaier with prizes and stuff. So, yeah, I have some opinions about tournaments for sure. I am endlessly impressed with what Magic has done with tournament play. Like they've built the foundation of their empire on tournament play and getting people together to play against each other for great prizes and money. And people pay for the tournaments and they buy packs of cards to prepare for the tournaments. So they've really they've pushed kind of the economics of their company through that tournament format. And there are other formats that they use now, online play and whatnot, but I think that's a huge part of the Magic infrastructure of not only getting people to show up at tournaments, but getting them to buy a bunch of stuff adjacent to and at the tournaments themselves. I don't think our games really do that. I think Magic does that because it's a collectible card game. And so you're incentivized to buy more stuff all the time. With any of my games, including Scythe, even though there's a fair amount of content, there's no, like, if you show up at a tournament for Scythe, you probably already own the game. You probably already own the expansions. So I'm not adding adding sales to the game by doing so. And so I think if a game is driven by expansionism and having all the things or having lots of different things, like a collectible card game, maybe a living card game, I think that can work really well for tournament play. But more, I don't want to say stagnant, but static maybe games like Scythe, limited in components and in terms of the people who show up at those tournaments probably already owning those things. I don't think it is as big of a benefit for a company like me to support them as much. However, for fun, I also like doing stuff for fun. And so I always encourage people, if people are excited to host a tournament for Scythe, whether it's a game store, an ambassador, or just a fan of Scythe, or any of our games, I encourage it. I love seeing that. And I do often end up supporting those types of tournaments with small prize support, like a bag of viticulture coins for the winner of the viticulture tournament, that type of thing. I do like seeing that. And I think I might have a blog entry about it. I don't know if someone wants to search and find that. I think I have talked about tournaments at some point, but maybe I just did that in my head. I don't know. Rob says, how many games do I get pitched every month? How many presentations make it past the first meeting or review? So the process that we use is that Alan, my co-founder, he sees all the form submissions for games that are submitted to Stonemaier Games, and I think we've said that we get about 100 submissions a year, and so he goes through a few every week, and he usually, I don't know the exact number about how many he inquires to have a video about or the full rule book for. A lot of them just right away don't make the cut, like clearly don't make the cut based on the questions that we ask, the filters that we ask for games that we're looking for. In terms of the number of games that we actually test out from those, I would say about a dozen a year. So 100 game submissions, we actually get to the table 12 a year, 10 or 12 a year. Josh says Scythe is his favorite game. That's awesome, Josh. Thank you. He's been trying other games with area control aspects, like Tyrants of the Underdark and Root. And what are some of my favorite area control games? Favorite area control? Let's see. I loved because I no longer have it, El Grande. I think El Grande is kind of the classic area control game, does that really well. I'm trying to think of other games that, because having a game with combat or conflict is different than controlling areas and maintaining control of those areas. Belfort, I would say Belfort is one of my favorite. Belfort does it in a couple different ways in terms of the worker placement and the parts of the city you control. That actually, Josh, I would say would be my favorite for sure. I really, really love Belfort's multiple aspects of area control and area majority. Cody says, any places that I'm looking forward to visiting in Kansas City? Yeah, we have a whole itinerary of things that we're going to do, Cody. I appreciate your recommendations. You gave some great recommendations. And a lot of food that I can't remember offhand. A place called Foo's, I think. A Foo's, not ice cream, frozen yogurt that I'm excited about. A lot of other restaurants that look great. And there's a climbing gym that apparently is in an old mine that Megan told me about that I'm really very curious about. Like you apparently go down a mine shaft into this climbing gym that's in an old mine. Just sounds like a really cool, maybe a little creepy place to rock climb. To do indoor, it's indoor rock climbing. So they built the gym. It's not you're using normal rocks, which I am not ready for at all. So I'm excited about that if we get to make it. And Can'tCon, I hope that we can make it to Can'tCon on Sunday. We'll see. It'll be a spur of the moment decision if we can do it. We'll see if we can do it. Leo has a recommendation for a bird from New Zealand. And yeah, Leo, if you ever have, I appreciate this. I doubt Elizabeth is reading it right now because Elizabeth is on her way to Germany to potentially accept the award for Wingspan winning the Kennerspiel. We really don't know if she'll win it, but she's taking a gamble and traveling there just in case. And so, Leo, if you have any, I would recommend putting it in the Wingspan Facebook group because that's where Elizabeth culls bird ideas for future expansions. But you never know. New Zealand and Australia might actually be the expansion that we've already completed. You don't know that. We haven't announced which continent that expansion will be. So it might be too late, might not. We'll find out. It's worth putting in that group just in case. Charles said that he's really enjoying the latest season of Stranger Things. And Charles says that it was a step up from season 2. And Charles, I agree. I had one little thing about season 2. It was a big thing, which was that well, spoilers if you haven't watched season 2 of Stranger Things. They separated the main girl. I'm forgetting her name now. It's a one E, M, L, V, whatever her name is. The one letter L. They separated her from the rest of the group for the entire season. And the whole reason I think that season 1 worked is that the group was together. I don't know if it was a filming issue, like if her first filming schedule didn't match with the rest of the boys, but it took away a lot of magic of the show. And I'm glad they're, again, hanging out together with each other in the current season. At least where I am. Cody says, have I read the Wheel of Time series? And I have not. It's been recommended to me, but it's such a big commitment. I guess that doesn't matter if I end up loving it, but I don't know. It's just, what is it, like 11, 13 books? It's a big commitment for me to get into. Especially, I was just looking at my my upcoming Kindle orders for the upcoming year, and I have like 8 books that are pre-ordered over the course of this year that I'm really looking forward to. So I would be hesitant to get sucked into an 11-book series and then have to take breaks from it to read these other books of series that I'm already into, and then kind of forget some of the characters and the plot of the Wheel of Time series. So I'm a little hesitant. Would you recommend it, though? Is it worth it? I've heard it's worth it. But yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Cody. Daniel says he's traveled to so many factories in a week and a half. He knows how roughly every component in games are made firsthand now. That's pretty cool, Daniel. Any you want to give us a teaser? What's one component that was made in a different way than you expected? Arthur says that tournaments bring a lot of visibility to games. I can see that. I can see tournaments bringing visibility. That's fair. And you're right about video games. Yeah. So I see your point here, and one of the marketing goals that I have for our games is to simply get them to the table. If you can get a game to the table, whatever that reason is, whatever reason you're giving people to get the game to the table, the greater the chances you have that someone will discover that game who hasn't already played it, and maybe they will also buy a copy. So it's very much a marketing tactic, I think, to give people reasons to get games to the table. And you were right. I think tournaments fit into that marketing strategy. I think that's certainly a fair point. I will say that my favorite style of tournament for a tabletop game is one for people where you can actually learn the game on the fly at the tournament. So like a Splendor tournament would be an example of a game that you can learn right there on the spot and be competitive within a game or two. Maybe not winning the tournament, but you can feel like you know what you're doing. Whereas with Scythe, I think that's a lot more difficult, or a more complex game like that, where I think the only people who show up are going to be people who already enjoy Scythe, who already know how to play Scythe. Which, again, as you say, might not be a bad thing, because those people are getting to the table, they're exposing it to other people. If the tournament is posted somewhere, then people are hearing about the game, and I think that's good for any game. Pete says, have I played Cerebria? And no, I have not played Cerebria. Arthur has another question here. I teach and understand rules very well, being the teacher of his group. I think I could be a good rulebook designer. Do I think there's a place for me in the board game community? Certainly, yes. Could you get paid for it? I don't know. I think it's worth, if that's something that you're passionate about, I think it's worth contacting a few companies that you admire and offering to be a rules editor, which is close to being the rulebook designer. I like, usually the designer of the game is the original rulebook designer, but then an editor comes in, and a great editor will come in and not just copy edit it, but also reorganize it and reformat it in a way that's very easy for players to understand. So as a starting point, if you're looking for one, I'd recommend contacting a few companies and just offering your services for free or for a small amount of pay. I pay our proofreaders to be an editor, a rulebook editor early on in the process. L, 11. Oh, okay. Thank you, Leo, for correcting me. 11. I was thinking of a letter instead of a number. Okay, Connor's back to his legacy question. The store employee grew up driving his moped, so he's very speedy. On the winding roads, he weaves in between vehicles and other mopeds. So I hang on to the trim behind you, or do I hang on to La? Do I wear any protective equipment? I would hopefully wear a helmet. I'd probably be more comfortable hanging on to the moped than to him, but if I really felt unsafe, I would have to. I would definitely feel uncomfortable, but I would do it if my safety was at risk. Yeah. I'll put my masculinity aside for the sake of moped safety. Leo says that he loves Wheel of Time, but he says it starts to drag a little bit. I definitely love Brandon Sanderson, who finished the series, so I'd be eager to get to like the final 3 books to see what Brandon Sanderson does with it. Phoebe says, I'm working on designing some puzzles for escape rooms. Have I done any escape rooms? And if I've done some that I've really liked, what do they do well? Yeah, I definitely done some escape rooms. I'll name 2 favorite elements, Phoebe, that come to mind when I think about favorite elements. One is that in Richmond, Virginia, I did a Goonies-style escape room where it really, really felt like the set design was the big thing. It really felt like we were in the hull of an old ship, like the wooden hull of an old ship. It was just beautifully designed in terms of the wood, the treasure that was scattered around. And there was a really, I'll say it because I don't think this puzzle is up there anymore, but there were a few just really good puzzles. One in which involved an entire wooden coffin moving to the side, fully automated. If you did something, I think we had to put like a sword in or something. And then at the end, we had to connect a circuit on opposite sides of the room with our hands. Like our bodies were the ones connecting the circuit, which was awesome. Very memorable, but I think it was the most memorable because of the set design. The other one I did was a wizard one in St. Louis. I won't spoil anything about the room itself, but they included puzzles like in the new Harry Potter game, or if you go to the wizarding world of Harry Potter, there are games where you have to wave your wand around in a certain motion. And they had, in this wizard escape room, they had puzzles like that where you had to figure out a certain design to make, and you actually did it with your hands. So instead of like writing down on a piece of paper or something like that, I really liked that I felt like a wizard when I was doing it. So it was not only just solving a puzzle, but I felt like I was immersed in the experience because I was actually waving my hand or my wand around to solve the puzzle. So for both of them, immersion and set design and some unique puzzles that went beyond the type of puzzles that I could get from like an escape room in the game board game really made them memorable for me. But I'm curious to see, Phoebe, if you, I'd love to try one that you try someday, that you create. So feel free to come back here and revisit this group sometime and share if you do have your own escape room that goes live. Mackenzie says, I know I'm not going to Gen Con, that's true, but are there games releasing at Gen Con that I'm excited about or would check out if I am going? Let's see, I'll look up a list of top 10 Gen Con 2019 releases and see what comes up. I'm terrible at remembering these things. There's a new game release list, but I have a feeling this is going to be really long. All right, I don't know if I'm going to do well at answering this question on the spot, Mackenzie. I feel like you had a list on your site, didn't you? Didn't you have a list of... Yeah, I'll look up the Meeple Street. TheMeepleStreet.com. You do have 5 games to hopefully demo at Gen Con Part 2. You have Part 1 as well. Where's Part 1? Okay, so Part 1, let's see if you have any on your list that overlap with mine. Mackenzie has Wonderland's War. Yes, I'm absolutely curious about that. The Isafarian Guard. I don't know much about that. Planet is released, and I've played Planet, so I would say I'm excited about it, but I have already played it. Bosk looks beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Bosk looks awesome. Floor Plan I have played, and I enjoyed it, and I pre-ordered it. Let's go back to your other list here, Mackenzie. How do we get back? I know this is great TV right now, me looking at the internet. The Quacks of Quedlinburg expansion, I am definitely looking forward to. The other ones you mentioned, I'm intrigued by Cat Cafe. I hope it's good. I'm intrigued by that as well. Yeah. You also mentioned Legendary Forests, Hats, and Truck Off, none of which I know anything about, although I know that Thundergriff Games does great stuff, so I'm sure Hats will be great. Yeah. That's... I'm sure there are other great games coming out there, Mackenzie, but I do not know them offhand. If anyone has some that you want to add to this list, let me know. So I asked Daniel about game manufacturing, and he says the biggest revelation in manufacturing is how much manual artistry currently goes into every component. We aren't talking about assembly lines and automation. Literal people with paintbrushes correcting fine details or adding some very minor details. I have been surprised to learn that as well, in terms of like when we did our realistic resources. I thought they'd be just mass produced, but and they are in some ways, but in other ways, yeah, there are people who are painting them and airbrushing them and doing that by hand. Yeah. Let's see. I don't have any other topics here, so I'm just... Okay, Connor says, would I rather have a small group of excellent testers or an extra large group of mediocre testers? Definitely a small group of excellent playtesters. I have originally, a long time ago, I just did quantity over quality. Now I have a number of filters that playtesters have to go through even just to become a playtester, and then to maintain their playtester status, they have to maintain that quality and their consistency and timeliness and all that stuff and communication. Yeah, so yeah, definitely quality over quantity for me for playtesters. Do I feel you get more quality information from tests that I attend or blind playtests? I probably, well, it's tough because when I'm not there, I'm learning things about the rule book that I didn't know from being there. But when I am there, I'm able to observe things that I wouldn't be able to observe. So I would say there's a plus and a minus for both. Phoebe says, if I'm ever in Melbourne, I'm welcome to come and play The Crumbling Prince. It's a narrative-driven escape room inspired by Legend of Zelda and Studio Ghibli movies, or Ghibli movies. That sounds amazing. Yeah, I have been to Australia, but I've been to Sydney, not Melbourne. So Melbourne, how do you say it? Melbourne? So I'll have to discover that someday. The Crumbling Prince sounds really cool. Glenn says, have I read any of Trudy Canavan's or Robin Hobb's books? I have not. I've heard of Robin Hobb, but I have not heard of Trudy Canavan. Which of the two of them, if you could select one book that you'd recommend that I start with, what would you recommend? You know, I think I've reached the end of the questions. I've reached the end of my topics. Oh, no, here's another one. Dale says that I look like a runner. Do I jog to distress? Dale, I have played soccer for most of my life. I was a sprinter in high school briefly. I am not a long-distance runner. I really do not like long-distance running, but I love sprinting. And for a long time, I was pretty good at it. I'm hoping I'm still good at it, but I haven't sprinted in a while. But my exercise of choice now, other than doing like some free weight stuff, push-ups, pull-ups, that kind of thing, is that I run up and down the stairs of my building. So I'm able to work in a very short but intense workout into my workday by doing that. I live in an 8-story building, and so I run up and down the stairs, the equivalent of, like, I run up to 8 and then run down, and then I run up to 7, then run down, then 6, then 5, and then I go back up to 6, and then 7, and then 8, and then I'm done. It's about 5 or 10 minutes. It's a great workout, really gets my heart beating, makes my legs stronger. And you're right, yeah, I either go in with like a question where I'm like, okay, I'm struggling with this element of business or game design. I go into the run with that question, and I think about it during the run. Or I go in with really no point, and I just clear my head, and it's wonderful. Even if I'm thinking about a lot of different things when I go into it, my mind is just completely clear afterwards. Yeah, Noel points out, distress or de-stress. It's de-stress, not distress. All right, so that's the hour. I'm now going to go try the recommendation from Phoebe to see if I can download this video to YouTube in a different way that I've been doing. Thank you so much for joining me with your answers, your questions, and just for being here. I really appreciate it. I will see you next Wednesday. Take care.